Hello, here we are once again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring, as many of you already know, through these videos, his philosophy, his disillusionism, and his misalgic theory that explains human behavior through aversion to suffering. And week after week, for a while now, we've been trying to apply some of these concepts to elements in everyday life. We've been following the news and different developments as the pandemic unfolded. We are in February 2022 now, still very much amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are going to pay attention today and probably in later weeks also, because this is a huge subject for us. We are going to pay attention to the others. We are going to pay attention, of course, from a disillusionist and misalgic point of view, to those around each one of us and how they affect us. So it's the others first cut from a disillusionist point of view today.
Well, we're going to talk about, when we talk about the others, we're going to talk about what I dubbed egosphere, okay? And this is going to be the part one about the egosphere. It's a very big subject, and it's a subject that merits a very thorough view and review to understand our position, the position of the ego inside of this, of his or her universe. Now, the egosphere basically tells us two things. It tells us that we have between 20 and 30 people, and then I'm not saying only people, but for this at this point will be people that affect my life. Affect, that means that it raises emotions in me. It may raises or it may raise emotions, negative or positive, any of them. So in my egosphere, there will be my brothers and my sisters, and my sister and my children, and you and my friends and my very close friends, and people of all kind of walks, but may also include a thing. For example, a cigarette lighter that I dearly love. That means that if I lose that cigarette lighter, it will affect me emotionally. It could include somebody in a non reciprocal situation. That means me and you, we have a reciprocity. But if in my egosphere Joe Biden is, and some people have Joe Biden or Brad Pitt in their egosphere, that means that if something happened to them, it affects you, yes, good or bad, yes, it may affect you in happiness or sadness. It doesn't. There doesn't have to be matching between the two. If that happens, then he or she are in your egosphere, and even your God. Now, in the God, there is an interesting situation. People may feel that they have a reciprocal relationship with the God. God talks to them. God decides something in their lives, so they may feel in a reciprocity relation. Which again, what matters is not the objective part of it, and this is what I try to say, but the subjective. That means egosphere is entirely a subjective situation. It is not objective. It doesn't matter if I know somebody who should affect you, but doesn't. Yes, you should be affected by one of your children, and you don't care about that child. You just don't care. So if you don't care, he or she are not in your egosphere. So, but then your children in turn, or your friends in turn, or anybody who is in your egosphere has its own egosphere. So it's a galaxy of egosphere. Yes, the whole society. But beyond that egosphere, it's not important. It exists, but not to you. There is an independent existence. I am not claiming. I don't know, the candidate of the right wing in France to the presidency. It does not exist. He or she may do exist, but I don't care. And the I don't care is the test. Yes, if you care, or if you could care, or you would care. Yes. Now, the egosphere could be somebody dead. It could be your grandfather in your egosphere and his teachings, and you have him present all the time. That means it may affect you. It may affect a book he wrote. It doesn't matter. If you are affected by it, it's in your egosphere. Now, the number of people in the egosphere, I said 2030. Why am I saying 2030? First of all, let's understand what is the egosphere. The egosphere is the modern iteration of the pack. We used to be, as any primate, part of a pack. Yes, you see monkeys, they all go with the pack. The pack used to have, the number varies up to 50 people. There may be a troop of 150 monkeys, but it's not the normal thing. The normal thing is if the amount of monkeys in a pack is set. Yes, so that's the first thing. We are accustomed to that relationship. Yes, but the difference between us and a monkey is that the monkey does not know itself. There is no ego sphere because there is no ego. There is no I. Yes, the monkey is a machine. It's just a machine. It's a computer. It's a machine. So as a machine, it does what the program that tells it to do. We behave like a machine 95% of the time when we sleep and when we sleepwalk. But we have that 5% of time in which we, and this is not a coincidence, in which we have an egosphere. So Florencio, what do you say about all this?
I have two questions. One, I already know the answer to, but I think it would be interesting for you to answer it during this video. And the other, I do not know. My first question is about the name. Where does the name Egosphere come from? And why is it called that way? And the second question, which I think it's more of a technical one, is, of course, I see how there are elements around me that tend to affect me on a regular basis. And you mentioned brothers and sisters, you mentioned even dead relatives, a god if I were a religious person, a celebrity I'm especially attached to. But are there also in my egosphere elements that are just there for a little while, that come and go, that don't stand as the others stand the test of time?
Well, let me first go the first question, where the word egosphere comes from. I invented the word. I take responsibility for it, and I like astronomical models. I like them just for a metaphor. I like astronomy a lot, but that doesn't mean so. We have a model. It's called the heliosphere. There is the sun and all the planets that move around it, and the sun affects the planets, and in a smaller way, the planets affect the sun themselves. We know that from the laws of Newton. Yes, the gravity works that way. So they all move around, yes. And then there is the area where the sun rays affect, and that's up to Pluto. That's the end of it. And then from then on, you have some gray area, the Oort cloud. And from then you have what I call the egopause, and they call it, in the sun case, is the heliopause. That means the place where the sun does not affect and is not affected. Both ways. Of course, if we talk in physics, people will tell you, yes, galaxies, black holes. I'm true with that part of the. So it's using exactly the heliosphere concept in which you are at the center, the ego is at the center, and other people are around it. Using that, we can go further and understand what happens when a comet comes into the solar system. The answer is the comet affects everybody else. Well, it's like the waiter in a restaurant. If a waiter comes to the restaurant and goes through the regular motions of being a waiter and asks you what you want to drink, and it's like always, I want to drink a martini, a dry martini, shaked, not stirred, and or just a glass of water, whatever you do. But if the waiter will tell you, well, we have a new thing, a new drink that they drink in the Andes is very good for you, that may stop that moment, that sleepwalking moment in which you do exactly like an animal. You go through the motions, and that person starts entering your egosphere. And if the person shouts at you and tells you, why didn't you finish your food? That happened to me once in a restaurant. Why didn't you finish your food? I mean, scolding you about it. That person just entered your egosphere. But I bet he won't remain there. So, the egosphere has the closer part, the brothers, the sisters, the friends, your boss, Brad Pitt, whatever. And sometimes they just enter your egosphere, and like a comet, goes away. I can give you an example in which things are in the middle. The person who got a transplant, who got an organ from a donor, and the relationship may be fleeting. Yes, the donor goes his own way, and you go. Sometimes they're in different countries, but that person will stay in your egosphere forever. even though you're never going to see him again, or you are not going to have a friendly contact with that person. He just gave you his kidney or her kidney. I don't want to think this is an issue of who gave you the kidney, but this is exactly the point. So girlfriends, boyfriends, things like that are fleeting or not, depending. But what I'm trying to say is that these are 20, 30 people, and those are the people you can attend. You can use your attention. More people, you could say, why not 50? Why not 1,000? Well, maybe 50 in some cases. But we know that it's 20, 30 people. Now, when I'm saying that these are 20, 30 people, I mean that when you are awake, that means when you're not sleeping and you are not sleepwalking, you have 20, 30 people.
I was going to ask you about that, because you mentioned before sleepwalking and actual sleep. And we've discussed this many times, even in these videos. And if we define egosphere in terms of those elements that affect me, or those elements, as you said in the beginning, which I think is interesting, those elements I care for, what happens during sleep? What happens during sleepwalking? Because I think the definition, the working definition we've been dealing with when it comes to sleep and sleepwalking is that there's not a care in the world for the one who is sleeping or sleepwalking. So does the egosphere go away? Because this would contradict the recurring nature of many of its elements.
You are right by pointing that, but think about this. Egosphere really resides in your memory. If tomorrow you have an attack of amnesia, everybody in your egosphere will disappear. You don't have an egosphere. You may have a new one with the nurses taking care of you in the hospital or in the hospice, I don't know. But that will be part of your egosphere. But your egosphere depends on your memory. Now, what we know for sure is when you go to sleep, and let's use sleep as the first difference. When you go to sleep, you don't have a memory. Memory is not active. You are not remembering anything because you're not awake. Therefore, you don't have an egosphere. It's the egosphere is intermittent. What do you mean? You mean you don't have an egosphere? What happens is the same thing that happens to Paris when you go to sleep. When you go to sleep, Paris disappears. It doesn't exist for you. There is no Paris. Yes. So when you wake up, Paris is still there, and you assume, rightly so, that Paris was there while you were sleeping. Same thing with egosphere. Yes. Your brother. Yes, of course. You remember your brother when you go to sleep. Your brother is still there. You don't think that your brother disappeared while you were sleeping. In fact, he could be sleeping himself, and then you disappear for him, and he disappears for you. So the egosphere needs you to be at least awake. But I will go one step further. Remember, most of the time, 95% of the day, we sleepwalk. That means we don't use our brain in the higher functions of the brain, to call it somehow. We are not intending anything. We are not using memory. We may have memory that it is attached to the program. Yes. So I have to walk here, and memory tells me that that's the habit in the habitual part in my memory. That kind of memory exists, of course, but not the memory where everything is there. While you are sleepwalking, there is no egosphere. Of course, in a second, because when you are asleep and somebody awakes you, it takes you some time until you are awake, until you are there. In sleepwalking, of course, that's the advantage of sleepwalking. You are in an instant, you are there. So suddenly you may remember your brother. Yes, suddenly you say, "Wow, my car does not lead up. I have to ask. I have my brother. He should take me to work." I'll give you a simple example. So the important thing is to understand that while we sleepwalk, we don't have an egosphere. We have an egosphere when we are awake, when you are fully awake. When we are, and let me remind everybody, sleepwalking looks like you are awake, but you are not in the real sleepwalking. This is the same. And you don't live, you don't experience sleepwalking. You experience sleepwalking by somebody else, not yours, as you don't experience sleep. There's no experience called sleep. Yes, it is the lack of experience. So it's the lack of everything else.
Interesting. We are out of time. I'm sorry about it.
But this is part one. Yes, we'll have
I'm
part
sure
two.
we will go back to egosphere and to discussing the others around this ego in different ways in future videos. But we are almost out of time now. So I retain this idea of whatever affects us as belonging in this egosphere, and this sort of gravitational or magnetic field that we live in only for as long as we are fully awake, because as you said, it's not there for us when we are asleep.
Just one point to be clear. In your egosphere, it's not only your brother who will take you to work. It's also if somebody's following you or wants to kill you, that person is in your egosphere as well. This is that. What I mean affect you, it don't mean affect you in a good way. It gives, rises for, it may create for you anxiety, it may create for you anger, hate, anything in which you are not indifferent to.
Very well. Thank you very much. See you next week. Okay.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.